lovely feminine friends. Welcome back to the channel. I am so excited for today's video because we are going to tackle some TRADWIFE traditional wife tips that I follow in my marriage. If you are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave your comments down below. Of course, if you're returning to the channel, also leave your comments down below because we love talking about these topics in the comment section, and I always read every single one of them as long as they are positive, uplifting, and productive towards the conversation of what we are talking about on this channel. We discuss topics of femininity, homemaking, and of course, embracing more of a traditional woman's lifestyle. Before we get into the video, I want to make it clear that embracing a traditional marriage does not mean that you are opening yourself up to abuse. If you believe that marrying a traditionally masculine man means that you are going to be abused financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically, that is absolutely not the case. And I encourage you to look more into femininity and masculinity content to understand what it truly means to embrace a traditionally masculine feminine relationship, because it is not abusive. It is one in which both parties thrive. It is a choice made by both people, and they come together and live their best lives in their own roles. I think it's funny when the mainstream media tries to portray the husbands of those of us who come on the internet and talk about how we are living this lifestyle as being abusive, because I have been doing this for like so many years, and I am going on 8 years of being married, and I can tell you that many of us are just married to men who want us to be able to step into the vocation in which we feel the most comfortable, the vocation in which we feel as though we can express ourselves the most and be as comfortable in our roles as women. And for those of us who are attracted to this content, the vocation in which we feel the most comfortable tends to be wife and mother. This does not mean that you are a full-time wife and mother necessarily, but it is the role that you want to center your life around. I could go on and on about this, but that is why I have playlists dedicated to these topics so you can dive deeper into what that means. For now, we're going to put this conversation aside, and we are just going to dive into the ways in which I embrace being a traditional wife in my marriage. Number one thing is that I assume the best of my husband. It's kind of silly to say now that mainstream society kind of pits husband and wife against each other. You can see it on Reddit. Although I love consuming forums and getting mom advice, I kind of have to sift through the negativity because a lot of it is just complaining about each other's spouse. And although I feel that there needs to be a safe space to talk about our problems, a lot of times it isn't the way in which people are doing it today. It's kind of painting your husband as the enemy. For example, weaponized incompetence. It's assuming that if your husband can't do a certain domestic task, for example, that he's just weaponizing it against you so that you will do it. Of course, there are people who do that, and that is abusive, but I guarantee that a large majority of husbands don't do it on purpose. And instead of extending grace and understanding to our spouses, many people use that against them. Next thing that I do is that I assume the 100% domestic responsibility. Now, this doesn't mean that my husband doesn't help me out in the domestic chores and taking care of the children, but this just means that I take pride in my role. In society, a lot of times now, we equate traditional woman's work to being a nuisance. And even though you might not be in a traditional marriage yourself, I encourage you to embrace the importance of all of these small tasks that encompass taking care of your children and your home as a high calling, because when you do so, you lift up women as a whole. And again, even if you are not a full-time homemaker, these tasks are important, because what I see is many women who work outside the home complain about the concept of the mental load, but fail to realize that when you don't assign importance, as for example, taking care of children as the future of the world, and you view that as an accessory, as kind of like a side hobby, then of course society is not going to recognize the mental load, and your spouse and everybody else is not going to recognize the importance of this. It starts with your mindset embracing what is the most important in your life. You might think that that could be your career, and I am not telling you that that is not going to bring you satisfaction. However, you're always going to feel as though the domestic tasks are going to be a burden if you don't realign the way in which you view your household and how it functions. So in my marriage, of course, I have the luxury of 100% of the time taking on that task. Again, it doesn't mean that my husband doesn't help out, but it's just recognizing the importance of this and my contribution to my family. The next thing, which ruffled a lot of people's feathers when I talked about this back in like 2016, is that I tend to do chores of most importance to my husband first. So for him, honestly, he could care less if the floors are sparkly clean. And I don't feel like doing housework necessarily all day because I love spending time with my children. So I prioritize what he prefers, which is laundry and cooking certain meals. And I feel as though this is a way that I can show love towards him, and that's why I do it. Next up, we are getting a little bit more controversial, but I trust my husband in leading the family. Sometimes it has led me in uncomfortable situations, such as renovations and flipping our homes, but the results have always been good because I trust his vision and I know the end goal of what he wants. This goes along with the concept of submission, and many people mistake this with being subservient. And this is absolutely not true. We talk together about the goals, we kind of formulate a game plan together, but I trust him and his opinion, and this is why I married him. When you don't marry somebody who you fully trust and you admire for their intelligence and their capabilities, this can also cause a lot of resentment. So you want to search for somebody that you admire their vision, you admire their energy for life, and you are willing to go in the same direction. That same note, talking about respect, I think that it's important not to talk about your relationship and talk about your spouse to other people. This is something that is common done in today's society. And, things here and there, like little grievances, I don't necessarily find are a bad thing to share with your girlfriends, but big problems, you want to work through them together before sharing with other people. And unfortunately, this has become more of a traditional thing to do in marriages, but it is a big point of respect. Another one is I don't police my spouse necessarily. I totally 100% trust my husband. He could honestly walk into a room of unclothed women, and I 100% trust that nothing bad would go down. Sounds completely bananas that it is a traditional thing to trust your spouse, but it is what it is. You can be totally relaxed in your marriage if you do not trust your spouse, if you are always assuming the worst of them, that they are going to betray you behind your back. And that is the beauty of a more traditional marriage, because if you look at it from a Christianity perspective, although a traditional marriage can be embraced by all different cultures, the husband is called to lay his life down, like Christ did for the church. And if you understand the gravity of that, if you put it in the context of a Christ in the Bible, you understand that there's absolutely no way that you could not trust this person, that you could not go into a covenant with somebody without understanding that you need to trust this person to that extent. Lastly, I've noticed that a lot of these topics surround the concept of respect, but in my marriage, we talk about how money is going to be spent. There isn't necessarily like Amazon packages that I ordered behind my husband's back coming to the door. Also, full transparency here, I actually fell into the habit of doing this for a couple months due to the normalization of this behavior on social media. So I am not judging anybody. I am just letting you know what I do now in my marriage and the benefits that have come from it. But it's the larger concept of respecting your spouse when it comes to money, to viewing your relationship and the future of your family on how you spend your money. Therefore, it is important to mention to your spouse what you are going to use the finances for. So I'm going to leave the video there. I always encourage you to leave your comments down below. My baby is awake, which is why we could talk on and on about this, but unfortunately I cannot. Hit the like button if you haven't already, go through my other videos, and follow me on my social media handles. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.